Here we are, and this is a completely unscheduled but very, very exciting opening address of an artist that I have had the pleasure of showing since 2000, which means this is one of the very, very first artists whose career I've had a chance to not only follow, but to watch the development of pieces over those 20 years. And the exhibition by Kim Atlin that is opening on Thursday officially is showcasing a current body of work, showcasing ones where I can see the influences of earlier works, and it's been pretty exciting. Kim is from Toronto, and being from Toronto, of course, and COVID hotspot means that we are really, really socially distanced. And Kim, of course, has this year, not only that, having to deal with moving studios, moving apartments, everything. It's been a really, really tumultuous time, but in that tumultuous time, often one sees the creation of extraordinary works. And we are now going to look at some of those extraordinary works, bearing in mind that the man behind the camera, Brian, will have those works up and hanging. And this is our first really virtual painting show that we're very excited about. Anyone who is interested, please remember, you can always make an appointment. We make appointments all the time. I've been here late at night, early in the morning, Sundays. We really don't care. These are special times, and we are accommodating everybody in special ways. Also, tomorrow, Stephen and I are driving to Toronto, so if you see anything that you absolutely need to have, please get in touch with us, and it will be delivered tomorrow, and you can't get better than that. Kim, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
How was that intro?
It was lovely.
Yeah. So Kim, this body of work now, in looking at it very crisply, because the paintings just arrived, literally 10 minutes ago, there seems to be three distinct evolutions here. The floral ones are extraordinary. Can you tell us?
Sure. I have an allotment garden in Toronto, and I've been growing things purposely for the idea of painting them. And I'd done a series previously which was based on urban gardens in Toronto, and then I've extended that, and now I'm doing these floral arrangements from stuff I've grown myself, and then I'm taking them to the studio and painting them and shining lights on them and working with them. Sometimes they're photographed, but often I'm just working directly on the flower arrangements, and sometimes you'll see it where the petals are falling or changing as time goes. And it's just been really exciting. And within them as well, the shadows often have as much as importance as the flower arrangements, and it's just been super fun to play with them and seeing what's happening.
We'll just switch because you're being backlit.
Okay, and now this is a form. Have you done circular paintings before and I just missed them?
It's quite recent as well. I think past year maybe. But it's just been interesting again, just playing around with different compositions and challenges of different forms. And as you know, Jonathan, I've always been someone who's informed by mistakes. And so I tend to have a lot of mistakes when I paint. And my work tends to change a lot because, again, I just get excited by mistakes, which then become new adventures in application and technique and approach. And it's really exciting for me. And it stops me from becoming too complacent.
Well, I mean, there's certainly nothing complacent here. Actually, this is fascinating. This particular painting, Forest Interiors Revisited. Revisited, because I've just now looked at the back of the painting. But what's really cool is that this reminds me of a body of work that you did about 15 years ago.
Yeah. So I'm going back to a subject matter that I've done before and investigating it with different techniques I've discovered and different ways of approach, right? So. And I like to do that because, again, I think you can see some of the stuff that I did before, and now I've added a different approach. My colors have changed quite a lot.
Well, we were just talking back 20 years ago. There was sunshine yellow was everywhere. It was absolutely extraordinary, and that was a time when that body of work was so successful. But I think what's really fascinating is that as successful as that body of work was, whereas some artists continue to flog a dead horse, you've never done that. Your work has always evolved, it's always been creative, it's always been your personal artistic muse that's moved you forward rather than just the demands of the public.
I get bored easily, and I think it shows in my work. And so if things become too comfortable, then I start to lose interest in them, and they become formulaic for me, and they become too easy. And so I end up, I change it once I get comfortable with something, because I just don't have interest.
Well, what I find interesting here in Forest Interiors Revisited again is that this is very different from 15 years ago. That introduction of the close-up of the ferns down at the bottom, because as I recall, when you were doing that body of work, there wasn't that kind of there weren't ferns illustrated. Like, it's almost like this painting would have that subtracting, and then I could have said, oh yeah, that's from that period.
Perfect example.
Yeah. Oh, and then here, this is pretty cool, because this body of work, that's that very stained glass. And here, the trees they've evolved over that kind of, but it still has a stained glass quality to it, the light.
Yeah, well, I've been playing with depth, and again, I call this series the Forest Interiors Revisited, because I'm revisiting a theme that I did before, and each one of these has a different specific title, but again, this is just the series. But,
this is Old Stand.
Yeah, so, and again, I think it, like, by having this foreground and the ferns and everything on the foreground, pull it forward, it creates more depth, I think, by having the different layers of texture and stuff.
Well, because here you've got the twigs on the ground, and that to me is really in this new evolution. That is something that was not present in earlier work. One of the fun things about showcasing an artist for over 20 years is that if you pay attention, you really see their story as it moves across that 20-year span. And it's been thrilling watching Kim's development over that 20 years where, Kim talks about not getting bored. Well, it's important that we don't get bored as well. Like, look here. Now this one is absolutely, now this is the rainforest, and you get the sense of the mist. This looks wet.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, the rain is this Ontario rainforest, or is this? I always think of rainforest in
Yeah,
BC.
it's interesting because like I do a lot of hiking and other stuff, and I was up in around on the Bruce Trail up by Owen Sound and stuff, and there's a real feel of a rainforest up there as well in some of the areas because it's so dense and it's so like the ferns and stuff. That I'm not sure where the reference is. Sometimes it's here, sometimes it's there, but
Sometimes it's here.
Yeah, sometimes it's here, and again, reality has always been a departure point for me. So it's not I'm not creating specific scenes. They're coming into my brain and then getting morphed into
Dispersed.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, look at these little guys. This is just. And for anybody in Toronto who's looking for delivery tomorrow, this is really, really going to be easy. So you see these? Isn't that amazing? And it was funny because when we first put it down, it was upside down. And I said, oh my God, I really like that. And Brian said it's upside down. And I said, well, that's the indication of a good painting. Actually, I didn't say that. Brian said that. But it's true. If you can look at a painting any way and it still looks good, you know that that artist has a really incredible sense of balance. Do you remember that exhibition we had years ago?
There have been so many.
No, the one that we had across the street, and the first painting that sold was a little one about that size. And you walked in, and I'd already sold it, and you looked at it, and you said, Jonathan, that painting's upside down. And I said, she'll never know. So if you're watching this, that painting, go and look. And if the signature is in the sky, let me tell you, turn it around.
Well, you know what, and that's one of the reasons I stopped signing them on the front because I could never find them as well. But yeah, so these paintings that you were just holding up, they're based on, I've been doing a lot of kayaking and canoeing, and I bought an inflatable kayak in Toronto, and I've been taking it around, and not just Toronto, but all over the place, and getting the perspective from right in the water and that level, and I've actually been sketching in the kayak I've been going around, I'll stop and try to do a sketch and then take it back to the studio and paint it as well.
Oh,
which
wow.
is just interesting, right? Like, again, it's just a different perspective and it's a different way of interpreting things. And again, these are all parts of my life. So I do a lot of hiking, I do a lot of kayaking and canoeing, and then I garden. So
Yeah. Okay, and then now this one is this is different in that
Ooh.
So this is quite different. This is a different body of work, or rather different thematically in the way that this one is done.
Yeah.
Blue Shield.
yeah, and again, it's the same idea. It's based on one of my. I think I was in a kayak again with this one, and again, it was just this perspective of it and trying to get that immediacy almost or something, and the perspective, and just playing around with light as I'm always playing around with it, light and line, and trying to evoke a space, and it's just really fun.
That's Fiona, I bet. I knew it. Thank you,
See you
Fiona.
later. These
That was,
videos are live.
Okay, this is totally live, totally unscripted. Now we're moving into autumn here, and by the way, this is not a frame. You can remove this, but there you go. So here is this more recent?
Yeah, that's again Forest Interiors Revisited, and again, just I'm just really pushing the palettes and playing around with it because I just find when you put colors in proximity to each other, they change, right? So it's just interesting to play around with that, and so I'm constantly playing that, constantly experimenting with color and what happens in proximity. For a while there, I was really focusing on pink because I've always had problems with pink, and so I just thought I'd embrace it. So there are a number of I've worked through a lot of my problems with pink as a color. So, but yeah, I like to play around with things and push it.
Well, what's interesting, what you just said there, people come in sometimes, and I hate the ones that come in, if you're watching this, but coming in with the fabric swatch, and what you said is totally right. Color influences color. So a painting that on walls here will look different in somebody's home. And so that if you're looking and you're trying to pull out the cobalt or pull out the turquoise or the yellow in your sofa, forget about it, because color does influence color. The most important thing is to love it.
Well, and I think, I think it was my aunt who said this, and I quote her a lot with this because I think it's really, really important. I think, finding a piece to match a space I don't think the right way to do it, because I think if you love a piece, you'll always find a space for it. And I think, and it really does come down to that.
We tell people that all the time.
Yeah. And it's always interesting to tell the collectors. We just sold a painting recently, and the person, we said, well, where are you putting it? And he says, well, I'm not really sure, but I absolutely love it. It'll find a home. And and that's really important. I love, by the way, this one, what you've done there with the shadow and the lighting. Was that some really dramatic underlit lighting to get that phenomenal shadow?
Yeah. So I work in the studio with a light, and I play around with it because the dynamic elements of these shadows, it just really excites me. So just trying to figure out how to do that, and then I'm playing with them. So a lot of times with these still lives, again, of these flowers I've grown at my allotment garden, and I've also traded and bartered with some of them, but it becomes almost sometimes more about the shadow than the foreground. But again, it's just been, these are an evolution. I've wanted to paint these for many years, and then I started to grow things for it, and it took me a while to figure out how to do it because I'm new to flower arranging as well. And one of my neighbors at the allotment garden was a landscape architect, and she's been talking me through a lot of these things and directing me what to grow. And her idea is that you should always, within flower arrangements, you should have butterflies that can fly through your flower arrangement. So that's what I'm aiming for with these, and making it interesting as well as textures. So yeah, there you go.
And here is success with pink. Oops.
Yeah, success with me.
You get a lot really creative when.
Well, and again, within the Forest Interior Revisited, right? Like here's another experimentation with pink, right? And again, it's just playing with things that make me uncomfortable, and I often will do that when I work, and that's one of the reasons that my work is evolving, because I'll get comfortable with something and then it's on to the next thing.
This, I think, is absolutely extraordinary. The use of color and the dynamism of the imagery is just like, this is a real this makes me feel alive. This has just got so much going on in there.
Which is, yeah, again, very exciting. It's based on a canoe trip, a backpacking canoe trip, or whatever you call it, a backcountry canoe trip. That's what it's called. I did last year, and it just and I call the series Unplugged because I am unplugged, other than the fact that I will be taking photographs or something, sometimes doing it, but you know, without the social media. And I think one of the things that I think is really important at this particular time is that people have a vehicle for their imagination to take them places when they can't go places on their own. So like I do view this artwork as hopefully doing that, like just a vehicle for your imagination to take you places, right? I think that's what art is about, I think.
So again, here, this is, I love the use of orange. By the way, for anyone, you know, colors make you feel good. They make you feel different. When I lived in England, I bought this incredible orange breakfast set, and it was only when I got back to Canada that I realized, or was informed in looking about color, orange is very much an antidepressant. It brings you awake. It wakens you. It gives you life. And look at that. I mean, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, what can I say? Well, actually, I've already said it.
So I think this is probably,
Well, we have one more here. And why don't you talk about that while I find out what the hell this is?
Yeah, so
Jonathan?
again, here's another experimenting with pink, and again, and just playing with it, and just again, playing with the foreground, these marks in the foreground where I've got the different things suggested. And again, I think, you know, with my work, I always think of it, you know, I take it to a place, and I always hope that the viewer or is going to engage in a dialogue with the painting and take it places beyond what I've painted, if that makes any sense at all. Because like, I think, you know, it's a conversation. It's a conversation between me and the painting, and then the painting and the audience. And I do think it's important. And for me, if I show too much, then it doesn't leave any space for the viewer or the audience or whoever to take it somewhere else. And so that's really important to me as part of my painting process.
Well, anyway, folks, as we've now, you know, given you a delightful preview of Kim's exhibition, which is theoretically opens on Thursday, but in reality is available now because we're in different times. And as I said, I'm driving to Toronto tomorrow. So if anyone in Toronto or anyone between here and Toronto sees something and says, oh my God, that's fabulous, then just get in touch with us.
and the work will be on the website
And
later today,
by the end of the day?
by the end of the day. Yeah.
By the end of the day, Brian is going to have the work up on the website, just in case you didn't hear him over talking me. And anyway, there we go. By the way, even though this is Thursday and this is 11 a.m., this is not our 12 o'clock show. Our 12 o'clock show will be at 12 o'clock. And at 12 o'clock, we have another surprise for you. And so there you go. Thank you so much for tuning in. Any questions, don't hesitate to call, don't hesitate to DM, don't hesitate to do anything. We are here to serve. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kim.
Thanks.